Welcome everyone. With Tekken 8 on the horizon and the basics guides complete, it's time for me to introduce another style of guide, the primer. In retrospect, the basics guides are indeed most helpful to players entering the intermediate level of play. It feels necessary then to have something for true beginners, and it seems appropriate to go way back on the channel and revisit characters whose guides are a few years old, since we're now on version 5.1. That said, this video should give you a good, quick rundown on the character to get you playing matches quickly. We will keep the technical lingo to a minimum, but you should still have some knowledge on basic standardized Tekken terms, especially notations and terms for various game mechanics. In other words, this guide is meant for beginners, but those that already know a little about the game, just not necessarily the character. If you are brand new to Tekken, check out the resource links in the video description below. I've included several, including a system basics guide that operates as a tutorial since Tekken doesn't really have that built in. To me, I think it's incredibly important to go over that before trying to tackle character specific guides. But enough of the preamble, let us begin. Let's start by talking about some offense. Josie's comes in two main flavors. The first is a crouch dash or CD, and the other is a stance called switch. Both are thankfully fairly easy to understand since your options once you enter them are pretty limited. With CD, the primary two options are CD3, a heavy low for damage and advantage on hit, and CD2, a mid-launching elbow. CD3 also knocks down on counter hit and hits grounded, so more potential there as well. Sadly, both are risky on block and in terms of their tracking. If you'd rather not commit to one of those, you do have a safe mid poke in CD4. If you're in rage, note you gain CD3 plus 4, a powerful safe mid launcher. It's insanely good, just obviously a one-time use thing. In addition, to help force the mix up a little bit, you can transition to CD from certain strings by simply pressing forward, like from down forward 1-2, 3-2, or even from her switch stance. Transitioning doesn't eliminate your risk, but might help freeze your opponent a little. Speaking of switch, this is your hyper aggression stance. You cannot manually do it, rather you have to pick a transition move. Down forward 4 and 1+4 are likely your best options. Down forward 4 is a mid that's more or less safe and will give sizable advantage on both hit and block. 1+4 is very risky if blocked, but it's a very quick low with incredible tracking and the same big advantage as down forward 4 on hit. 2-4 deserves an honorable mention as well since it's a strong natural combo and tricky to duck on block because of its speed. In any case, like crouch dash, once you're in switch, things are pretty straightforward. Switch 1 is your go-to, a safe, fast elbow that can juggle on counter hit. With one exception, switch transitions give huge advantage on block and hit, so you need not worry about any parry or crush or movement options to counter switch 1. The only real risk is if they duck it. But that's where your two mids come in, switch 2 and switch 4. Switch 2 is more common since it's faster, tracks better, and can yield more reward without a wall, but it's up to you which one you like more. Switch 3 is your singular low. It's not a fearsome low, but sprinkling it in can help crack defensive timings. Otherwise, like I mentioned, you don't have to do any of these, and instead you can go to CD to force a mix-up. And that's it. She sadly doesn't have much of a grab game, so don't expect much mileage out of those if you're playing against a good grab breaker. Outside of some standard poking, which we'll get to later, CD and switch are the best and most common ways to get pressure going. CD3 in particular, despite the risks, is a must use to get opponents ducking. Just try to be smart with its use since becoming too predictable with it will lead to some easy losses. For defense, Josie has to rely on her speed and counter hits. She does have an evasive sway and a punch parry, but the risk versus reward on those is not great, so best to stay away from them until you get comfortable with the character. Instead, focus on some basic tools like 2-4 and standing 4. 2-4 is a strong jab combo we already mentioned, and standing 4 is a traditional keep out tool that's nearly as fast as a jab and will net you a juggle on counter hit. Forward 1+2 is also a very quick, safe forward moving elbow that gives a mini combo on hit, no counter hit required. The risk is that it's a high. Standing 3 and down 4 are also extremely common poke tools that, although low in reward, are very good for keep out and freezing opponents. As an added bonus, standing 3 can go to CD if you wish. If you happen to be crouching, while standing 1 is a very fast, safe counter hit launcher as well. Otherwise, if you think you have your opponent's timing pegged, forward 3 and forward 3+4 are both safe mid counter hit launchers. launchers. They're just limited in range. I also highly recommend Forward 4-3. Forward 4 has insane range for its speed and is incredibly safe, but the best feature is that you have enough time to see if it hits before having to do the second hit. Even if you mess that up, it's not too risky on block. Since the move is now her wall push, it has crazy good utility to check people at range. Outside of all of that, you can use more active defense since up 3 and up forward 4 are excellent low crushes. Up forward 4 is very quick, while up 3 is safe on block. She unfortunately doesn't have any really powerful high crushes, however, she has a quick while standing launcher with while standing 2-1, so keep that always in mind if someone is abusing highs. Note that the combo is a little tough, but it's worth practicing. Similarly, down forward 2, while not a true high crush, is notorious for sneaking under highs. Just be mindful that it is risky on block, although it also serves as a great whiff punisher. Speaking of, Josie is actually a fairly good punisher. She has a really nice jab punish with 1-2-2. Both 2-4 and forward 2-4 are high quality 12 frame punishers. Forward 1+2 is a solid 14 frame punisher, which not all characters have, and then she can start launching at 15 frames with either down forward 2 or up forward 4. Similarly, while standing 2-1 is a 13 frame while standing launcher, which only a handful of characters have. Even if those frames don't make sense to you now, just understand that they are common punishment speed tiers. But these punishers are also important if your opponent whiffs, because you can and should be doing lots of sidesteps and backdashes. Movement is key for Josie, especially to get away from pesky quick high pokes. So always have down forward 2 or your favorite punisher locked and loaded. And then finally, her lone armor move, down forward 3+4, leaves a bit to be desired. It does decent damage, but it's punishable on block and has absolutely awful recovery, which is really bad if you whiff it, and also limits your follow-up potential if it hits. Try to use it sparingly. Josie doesn't have a huge move list, so believe it or not, we've mostly covered her best stuff, but we can mention a few other things quickly. Since we mentioned that tracking was an issue, make note of 3+4 and forward 4. Both are homing, are fairly quick, and juggle on counter hit. It can be tricky to place though, and although forward 4 is technically safe on block, you're mostly forced to defend afterwards unless you want to start giving up easy counter hits. Down forward 1 we also mentioned as a crouch dash transition tool, but it also has good tracking. Otherwise, using down 4 and 1+4 to stop stepping is pretty common. For other tools, make note of back 4-3. It's a natural combo, both hits being mid and safe on block, so a really good safe check against duckers. Not a ton of reward, but enough. Down back 4-2 and back 1-2 operate kind of the same way. They can just be a little trickier to use because of their follow-up options. She also kind of has a full crouch game with full crouch down forward 4 and while standing 3. They are roughly the same speed, while standing 3 being a safe mid and full crouch down forward 4 being a risky, heavy hitting low. I wouldn't rely on it, but it's a neat thing to toss in now and then. She doesn't have much to get her to full crouch, but down 2 is notable since it's a very safe mid that can juggle on counter hit. Note that you have to hold down, otherwise she remains standing. And that basically ends the list. The only piece that we're going to skip are juggles. Juggles are very important in Tekken, but they largely boil down to practice. Once you hit your launcher, you should know what to do from there, so there's not much to discuss. That said, I've included a link in the video description below for some standard combos, so take a look when you get to that point. This brings us to the end of the primer. Josie is a quick, aggressive character that can pump out damage pretty quickly, especially if she lands any of her nasty counter hit tools. She's also generally safe and is a really solid punisher. Her biggest issues by far are her tracking and the reward on her lows. Without a grab game, she can really struggle to crack good defensive shells. She's also one of those rare characters that lacks a strong, true high crush. She's a lot less popular than in the past, but she's still a good character and has only received buffs as the game has aged, so she's the best she's ever been. With that, I'm hoping this information was succinct and helpful for getting a jump on the character, but feedback is always welcome. Be mindful that in-depth discussion for game plans and move attributes will be saved for intermediate guides, although since we have the more robust basics guides already for Tekken 7, true intermediate guides will be something to look out for with Tekken 8. Lastly, big thanks to our patrons. You guys are the best, and that support means more than you know. But to everyone, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.